Hi, this is Michael Kohler with Coral Castle Explained. In my last video I was talking about the strange etching that Edward Leedskalnin had placed on his metal door at the entrance to the Coral Castle. This is a close-up of it. As you can see in the etching, you have the sun here, and you have two arcs. One that goes up to a sphere or circle with no marking, and one that goes to the bottom, which is labeled with the word Earth and the number 21. I had also mentioned to you that you could see this etching in the coral at another place within the Coral Castle on the north wall. As you can see, here's the sun. You have an arc going up and an arc coming down. I had also told you that the reason that Ed placed the etching on this stone on the north wall is because he is trying to tell us part of his secret. Well, here it is. The bottom circle, which is labeled Earth, represents the Earth. The number 21 represents the energy that he was able to access from the Earth, but he was only able to do so in certain conditions when they were in line. The top circle is actually represented by the eyepiece of the Polaris Telescope. Let me remind you by showing you a few pictures. This is the image that I showed you of the crown and the north wall. This is the block on which the etching is. This odd piece of coral at the top, which looks like one of his chairs, has a triangular piece missing out of it. This missing piece can be found on this part of the north wall right here, which is actually the eyepiece to the Polaris Telescope. Let me show you a picture of that. Here is an image of the Polaris Telescope according to the Coral Castle website and its pamphlets. The Polaris Telescope is 25 feet high and weighs almost 30 tons. As you can see, there are crosshairs in this opening, and in the eyepiece of the Polaris Telescope there are also identical crosshairs. Edward Leedskalnin painstakingly excavated from the ground this 30-ton piece of coral, the Polaris Telescope, and placed it so perfectly in the ground that it is exactly lined up with the star Polaris. This type of an engineering feat is clearly beyond the abilities of a person with a fourth-grade education. How could one man by himself not only create and position this 30-ton block of coral, but align it so perfectly that it is placed in the ground at the exact position that it needs to be in order to see the North Star from this eyepiece? Regardless of how he did it, there is a reason behind this amazing engineering maneuver. He was trying to show us that the foundation of knowledge from which he was able to utilize the energy of the Earth and make his coral blocks light as a feather was based upon some astronomical considerations, which include not only the positioning of the Coral Castle, but also its positioning in space in regard to its alignment with Polaris, its orbit around the Sun, and how it was aligned with the Moon and the planets in our solar system. As you may or may not know, the Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned perfectly with the cardinal points, and is not the only structure that has been aligned in near perfect precision. Edward Leedskalnin was showing that your positioning in the Earth, or on the Earth, as well as the Earth's alignment with Polaris, its position in the solar system, had something to do with antigravity and his ability to access it. Ed once said that the scientists and astronomers of today were confused about the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, and if they would just come to the Coral Castle to see his measurements that he had taken using his Polaris Telescope, that he would help them understand the mistakes they had made in regard to their conventional understanding of science and gravity. He recorded his findings on something that is called the sundial. Many people believe that the sundial was simply used by Ed to depict the hours of a day that a person should work, which was between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. What is not understood is that this sundial is much more than a simple time-keeping device, and that it clearly shows that Edward Leeds Skalnin understood something that science had overlooked in regard to how Earth's orbit around the Sun, its alignment with Polaris, and its positioning in the solar system in regard to the planets would allow him to do the miraculous. In the next video, I will discuss the sundial in greater detail and show you how it is possible to use this in order to determine the best times to access this energy.